The diplomatic station floated at the edge of known space like a jewel balanced on nothing. Its outer structure curved in wide silver arcs, layered with light panels that shifted colors depending on which species occupied the halls inside. The station had been designed to impress but also to calm. Every angle was smooth, every corridor wide enough to avoid accidental offense, every sound filtered and softened so that no one felt threatened. For the alien princess, none of that mattered. She had been raised in halls older than this station, halls carved from crystal stone on a world that measured time in cycles instead of years. She had learned how to stand before councils that could decide the fate of entire systems. She had mastered the art of stillness, the controlled breathing that kept emotions hidden, the slight tilt of the head that showed confidence without arrogance. She had never failed to maintain her poise, until today. The princess moved through the main diplomatic corridor surrounded by her attendants, their steps perfectly timed, their ceremonial robes flowing in synchronized patterns. Her posture was flawless, her expression serene. To any observer, she was the image of royal calm. Inside, her thoughts were less orderly. Humanity had arrived only months ago by galactic standards. Their first contact had been cautious, almost humble. They had asked more questions than they answered. They had listened more than they spoke. That alone had unsettled many older civilizations. Now the formal introduction was happening. Humanity was being welcomed, measured, judged. The princess had studied their files. She knew their biology, their divided governments, their history of conflict and cooperation. She knew they were physically unimpressive compared to many species in the hall today. Shorter lifespans, slower reflexes, limited sensory ranges. On paper, they were ordinary. That was what made the unease harder to explain. As the procession approached the central chamber, her eyes moved automatically, scanning the room with practiced ease. Delegates clustered in familiar formations. Security personnel from various species stood at attention near the walls, armored, armed, visibly alert. And then she saw him. He stood slightly apart from the others, near one of the chamber's curved support columns. He wore no armor, only a simple dark uniform, no visible weapon, no ceremonial markings beyond a small symbol on his chest that matched the human delegation's banner. He was a human soldier. He was standing still but not rigid. His weight rested evenly, his posture relaxed yet balanced. His hands were clasped behind his back, not in submission but in readiness. His eyes moved slowly across the chamber, not lingering on any one individual for too long. When his gaze passed over the princess, it did not sharpen with curiosity or soften with admiration. It assessed. The sensation struck her without warning, like a sudden drop in gravity. She had been studied before, by rivals, by scholars, by those seeking advantage. This was different. He did not look at her as royalty. He looked at her as someone who might need protection. Her breath faltered for a fraction of a second. One of her attendants noticed and adjusted their pace slightly to match her recovery. No one else seemed aware. The princess forced her focus forward, reminding herself that humans were new, unfamiliar, likely untrained in the subtleties of interstellar etiquette. And yet, as the formal greetings began and voices filled the chamber, she felt the quiet pull of his presence like a steady pressure at her back. The human delegation entered with minimal ceremony. No grand displays, no symbolic gestures that demanded attention. Their leader spoke briefly, expressing gratitude for the invitation, acknowledging the shared hope for cooperation. It was polite, correct, almost understated. The princess listened carefully, her trained senses noting tone, pauses, word choice. The humans did not exaggerate their importance. They did not promise greatness. They spoke instead of responsibility, of learning, of mutual care. Still, her awareness kept drifting. The soldier had not moved. As conversations broke into smaller groups, the princess was guided toward a reception area where informal dialogue was expected. This was the part she usually enjoyed, the careful dance of words, the subtle tests of character. She answered questions smoothly, her voice calm and musical. She nodded at the right moments, smiled when protocol allowed. All the while, she felt watched, not stared at, not judged, guarded. Finally, during a natural pause in the flow of conversation, she allowed herself to turn slightly, as if adjusting her position for comfort. Her eyes met his. For a brief moment, the noise of the chamber faded. His eyes were unremarkable in color, a muted shade that reflected light without drawing attention. But there was depth there, awareness, a kind of steady patience that felt older than his species' short history suggested. He did not look away immediately. Neither did she. The princess felt a strange heat rise beneath her controlled exterior. Not fear, not attraction, something else. A disruption. Her training urged her to reassert dominance, to break the contact on her terms. Before she could act, he inclined his head slightly. Not a bow. Not submission, an acknowledgement. Then his gaze moved on. The release of tension was so sudden that she had to consciously steady herself. She realized then that she had been holding her breath. No one else noticed. Later, as refreshments were served, carefully calibrated to accommodate dozens of biochemistries, the princess found herself positioned closer to the human delegation than expected. She suspected careful planning, though by whom she could not say. The human soldier now stood closer, within respectful distance. She could sense his attention shifting subtly as beings passed between them, recalculating paths, watching for imbalance. She spoke before she had fully decided to. "You are not adorned as your station would suggest," she said, her voice neutral, carrying easily through the gentle hum of the chamber. The soldier turned to face her, his movements smooth, economical. "My role does not require adornment, Your Highness." His pronunciation was careful but not stiff. He had practiced her language, she realized. "And your role is?" she asked. "Security liaison," he replied. "I am here to ensure everyone leaves safely." The simplicity of the statement caught her off guard. No mention of honor. "No reference to glory or authority. Even those who do not belong to your people?" she asked. He met her gaze again, and this time there was something almost apologetic in his expression. "Especially them?" The princess felt her composure slip again, just slightly. She masked it with a thoughtful pause. "Humans assign such responsibility to a single individual?" she asked. He shook his head. "No, we assign it to everyone. I am only one part of it." She studied him more openly now. His uniform showed signs of wear, subtle creases that suggested long use rather than ceremonial preparation. His hands bore faint marks of labor, not injury, but work. "You do not seem anxious," she said. "I am attentive," he corrected gently. The distinction lingered between them. As the reception continued, the princess found herself listening differently. She noticed how humans interacted among themselves. They deferred to one another without visible hierarchy. They checked understanding, repeated information, adjusted when misunderstandings arose. There was no chaos, but there was flexibility. When a minor translation error caused confusion with another species, it was a human linguist who noticed first and corrected it quietly, preventing embarrassment. When a delegate showed signs of discomfort due to atmospheric variation, a human technician offered assistance without drawing attention. None of it was dramatic, all of it was effective. The princess felt something shift inside her perspective, like a structure being subtly rebalanced. As the formal event drew to a close, she prepared to depart. Her attendants gathered, and protocol demanded a final acknowledgement of the human delegation. She turned once more toward the soldier. "You have observed much today," she said, "and yet spoken little." He inclined his head again. "Listening is part of my duty." "And what have you learned?" she asked, unsure why the question mattered so much. He considered for a moment, then answered honestly, "That this place holds many lives and they all matter." The simplicity struck her harder than any grand speech. As she walked away, her steps remained measured, her posture flawless. To any observer, the princess had maintained her poise perfectly. Only she knew how close she had come to losing it. And somewhere behind her, the human soldier returned to his silent watch, unchanged, while the galaxy, slowly and quietly, began to reassess what humanity truly was. The princess did not speak about the human soldier on the walk back to her assigned suite, but his presence stayed, with her like a small stone in her mind. It was not heavy enough to slow her steps, yet she felt it with every thought. Her attendants walked in their usual formation. Their faces remained calm, their eyes forward. They were trained not to ask unnecessary questions, but they were also trained to notice changes in her breathing, the timing of her pauses, the tension in her hands. The princess sensed their silent concern and gave them nothing to hold. Her shoulders stayed level. Her pace stayed even. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was steady. "Prepare the cultural briefing for the human delegation," she said. "I will attend the exchange tomorrow." One attendant blinked, surprised, and then lowered their gaze. "As you command, Your Highness." It was not unusual for her to attend exchanges, but it was unusual for her to request it so quickly. Most species preferred weeks of preparation before direct cultural contact with humans, because humans were still new, still unpredictable in certain ways. The princess did not say why she wanted the briefing. She did not say that she wanted to understand the calm in the soldier's eyes. She did not say that she wanted to know what kind of world could shape a people like that. In her suite, the environment adjusted to her species' comfort. Light softened, air composition shifted, gravity tuned slightly. A tray of familiar nourishment waited near the seating area. The walls displayed gentle patterns from her homeworld, pale and flowing like slow water. She dismissed her attendants after the required formalities. The doors closed, sealing her in with quiet. Only then did she allow herself to sit with less than perfect posture. She looked at the data slate on the table. It contained human files, history summaries, psychological profiles, recorded speeches, reports from first contact teams. She had studied them before, but now she read them differently. Humans had been divided, the reports said. Many governments, many cultures, many languages. Still, they had managed to send a unified delegation. That alone was a diplomatic achievement, but the documents suggested the unity was fragile, always needing effort. The princess traced a finger along the text, letting her eyes linger on a line that described human resilience as adaptive persistence under repeated failure. She frowned slightly. On her world, failure was a shameful thing, a flaw. Something to hide, something to smooth away with perfect preparation. For humans, it seemed, failure was expected, planned for, almost welcomed as a teacher. She reached the section that described human military training. It was not written in dramatic language, it was practical. It spoke of emotional regulation, crisis response, teamwork across differences, and the ability to remain calm when everything was uncertain. The princess closed the slate and stared at the wall patterns without really seeing them. So that was it, she thought. Not a royal discipline, not ceremonial poise, a survival skill. Her breathing slowed. She felt again that strange heat under her calm exterior, not panic, not fear, something like being challenged. The next day, the diplomatic station felt different, though nothing had changed. The same lights shifted in the same gentle rhythm. The same soft announcements echoed in multiple languages. The same security personnel stood at their posts. But now the princess noticed the small hesitations in alien delegates when they saw humans. The cautious glances, the tight posture. Many species still did not know what to do with humans. The older empires had centuries of patterns for dealing with each other, rituals, formal threats, political games. Humans did not fit easily into those patterns. They were too direct in some ways, too quiet in others. The cultural exchange took place in a neutral hall designed for controlled interaction. The room had adjustable sections, so it could be made warmer or cooler, brighter or dimmer, based on the needs of the participants. Seating was arranged in wide arcs, leaving enough space for different body types and personal distance preferences. The princess entered with only 2 attendants, fewer than usual. It was a subtle signal. She was not coming to intimidate, and she was not coming to hide behind a crowd. The human delegation was already there. Their diplomats sat with open posture, their hands visible, their expressions attentive. They had brought small objects, cultural samples, informational devices, carefully sealed containers with scents and textures meant to represent Earth without causing harm to sensitive species. And near the edge of the room stood the soldier. He was not at a rigid post. He was positioned where he could see every exit, every face, every shift in movement. He looked like part of the room's structure, quiet and steady. The princess felt a brief tightness in her chest. She ignored it and approached the human diplomats. "Princess," the human delegation leader said, standing and offering a respectful bow that was clearly based on research rather than instinct. "We are honored you joined us." The princess returned the formal greeting with practiced grace. "I am here to learn," she said, "and to offer clarity where I can." A human cultural specialist stepped forward, holding a small projection device. "We prepared an overview of Earth's basic cultural principles," they said. "Simple, not complete, just enough to begin." They activated the device. A gentle holographic display appeared, images of Earth's oceans, forests, cities, people. The sound of wind and water played quietly in the background. The princess watched, her expression neutral. Inside, she felt something unexpected. Earth looked alive. Not in the controlled way of her world's carefully shaped landscapes, but in a wild, layered way. The planet looked like it had grown without asking permission. A human voice explained concepts like shared responsibility, voluntary cooperation, and repair culture. The idea that broken things could be fixed instead of discarded, that mistakes could be corrected instead of erased. The princess listened closely. The humans spoke without claiming superiority. They described their flaws openly. They spoke of past divisions without trying to excuse them. The honesty was almost unsettling. When the presentation ended, the princess asked her first question. "Why do you speak of your failures so easily?" she asked. The human leader exchanged a glance with a colleague, then answered, "Because if we hide them, we repeat them." Another human added, "Also because admitting them helps others trust us. We don't want to pretend we are perfect." The princess's attendance shifted slightly, disturbed by the idea of openly naming imperfection in a diplomatic setting. The princess did not react outwardly, but she stored the answer. A second question formed in her mind before she could stop it. "Do you not fear losing respect?" The human leader gave a small, almost tired smile. "Respect that depends on pretending isn't stable. We prefer respect that survives truth." The princess felt that answer settle into her thoughts like a new weight. The exchange continued. Humans asked questions too, careful ones. They asked about her people's art, their methods of governance, their education systems. They did not ask insulting things. They did not assume. They listened. At some point, the princess's eyes drifted again toward the soldier. He was watching the room the way a skilled navigator watched a storm, calm, aware, ready to act without making the storm worse. The princess found herself standing, almost without deciding to. She walked slowly toward the edge of the hall, as if she needed a moment away from the main conversation. Her attendants started to follow, but she lifted a hand slightly, signaling them to stay. The soldier noticed her approach before she was close. His posture shifted subtly, not defensive, not aggressive, simply attentive. When she reached a respectful distance, she stopped. "You are present again," she said, as if the fact itself was curious. "Yes, Your Highness," he replied. "You are not speaking," she observed. "My job today is to keep things smooth," he said. The princess tilted her head slightly. "Smooth," he nodded. "If everyone feels safe, people can talk. If people can talk, problems don't grow teeth." The princess paused. The phrase was strange, but the meaning was clear. "You assume problems grow," she said. "They do," he answered simply. "If ignored." The princess looked at him more directly. "What is your name?" A flicker of surprise crossed his face. It was small, quickly controlled. Still, she noticed. "My name is Daniel Reyes," he said. "Sergeant." She repeated it in her mind, testing the shape of it. "Daniel Reyes. And you," he added, careful not to offend, "may I ask how you prefer to be addressed?" The princess hesitated. Her title was her shield, her identity, her role in every room. Yet something in his question felt sincere, not political. "My personal name is not used casually," she said. He nodded without offense. "Understood." The princess expected the moment to end there, but she felt an impulse that surprised her again. "You watch as if you expect disaster," she said quietly, so their words would not carry. Daniel's gaze moved across the room, then back to her. "I expect stress," he corrected. "Stress makes people act strange. That doesn't mean they are bad, it means they need support." The princess's throat tightened slightly. Support. The word felt odd in the context of security. "Is that how humans view protection?" she asked. "As support," Daniel considered. "Protection can be many things. Sometimes it's a barrier. Sometimes it's a guide. Sometimes it's just being present so someone doesn't feel alone in a strange place." The princess's fingers curled lightly against her palm. She forced them to relax. "My people would call that softness," she said. Daniel's expression did not change, but his eyes seemed to sharpen in focus, not in anger, but in seriousness. "Softness isn't weakness," he said. "It's control. It's choosing not to add fear to a situation." The princess felt the statement strike something inside her, like a bell ringing in a chamber she had never opened before. The exchange hall grew louder as conversations continued. A small misunderstanding arose between two non-human delegates and a human diplomat about the meaning of a gesture. The tension was minor, but the princess noticed how the humans responded. They did not argue. They asked questions. They offered an apology even before being accused. They adjusted. The tension dissolved like mist. The princess looked back at Daniel. You said your world shaped you for uncertainty, she said. Tell me how. This was not a formal request. It was too personal. She expected him to refuse or to give a rehearsed answer. Instead, he spoke carefully, as if choosing simple words on purpose. Earth is complicated, he said. Our weather can change fast, our oceans are deep, our land can shake, our people can disagree loudly. Sometimes we have more problems than resources. Sometimes we have enough resources, but we fight about how to share them. The princess listened, still. Daniel continued. So we learn early that planning matters, but planning isn't enough. We learn that pride doesn't stop storms. We learn that if you don't help each other, you don't make it. He glanced toward the human delegation. We have many mistakes. We also have many second chances. People try again, they build again, they fix what breaks. The princess's voice came out softer than she intended. That is not the way of my people. Daniel nodded, accepting the difference without judgment. Different worlds teach different lessons. The princess watched him for a moment longer. Then she said something she had never said to a soldier of another species. Walk with me. Daniel blinked once. His eyes flicked to the human delegation leader, who noticed the exchange and gave a small nod. Permission. Daniel stepped beside the princess at a respectful distance. Not too close, not too far. They moved through a side corridor connected to the exchange hall. The corridor was quieter, with fewer observers. Soft lighting traced the floor, guiding visitors without overwhelming their senses. The princess felt oddly exposed walking with him without her full entourage. She kept her chin lifted, her pace steady. Daniel matched her speed easily. After several silent steps, the princess spoke. When you looked at me yesterday, I felt evaluated. Daniel's gaze stayed forward. Yes, the direct agreement surprised her. Why? Because you were walking through a crowd that could become unsafe, he said, as if the answer was obvious. Because you were surrounded by people who might protect you, or might not, depending on how panic spreads. The princess's eyes narrowed slightly. You believe panic spreads, Daniel nodded. Like fire sometimes, not because people are evil, because fear changes priorities. The princess's voice tightened. My people are trained against fear. Daniel looked at her then, briefly. Training helps, but biology exists. Stress chemicals exist. Instinct exists. Everyone has limits. The princess felt a small spark of irritation. You speak as if my people are fragile. Daniel's expression stayed calm. No, I speak as if all people are real. The irritation faded, replaced by a strange pause. Real, the word was simple, but it carried weight. They reached a viewing window that opened onto the station's central garden dome. Inside, plants from dozens of worlds grew in carefully balanced sections. Water flowed in thin streams. Soft insects and harmless pollinators moved in controlled patterns. The princess stopped near the window, looking down. Daniel stood beside her, his hands behind his back again. You are strange, the princess said quietly. Daniel's mouth curved slightly, almost a smile. We get that a lot. The princess did not smile. Her poise held, but the honesty in her tone was unusual. You do not behave like other soldiers. Daniel looked down into the garden. Maybe your idea of soldiers is different. My idea of soldiers is simple, she said. They represent power. Daniel's voice remained calm. Sometimes soldiers represent sacrifice. Sometimes they represent disaster prevention. Sometimes they represent a promise that civilians won't stand alone. The princess's gaze shifted to him. A promise. Daniel nodded once. That's what I signed up for. The princess let the words settle. She felt again the same unsettling thing. He did not want to impress her. He did not fear her. He did not worship her. He behaved as if she was simply a person who mattered. That was almost more challenging than any insult. As they stood there, the station's general announcement system made a soft chime. A reminder that environmental tuning would shift for a scheduled maintenance cycle. Normally, such a chime meant nothing. This time, the princess saw Daniel's attention sharpen instantly. Not panic, not alarm, just focus. He glanced toward the corridor's far end, then toward the nearest emergency indicator panel. He did not move dramatically, but his body had changed, like a quiet machine switching modes. The princess noticed. What is it? She asked. Maintenance can be fine, he said. Sometimes it is, I'm just checking. He walked to the indicator panel and scanned it quickly. Then he looked back at her. All good, he said, just routine. The princess felt an unexpected wave of relief, and it annoyed her. You reacted quickly, she said. It's habit, Daniel replied. You live in habits, the princess said. Daniel gave a small shrug. Habits keep you steady when your mind gets loud. The princess stared at the garden again. And your mind gets loud often? Daniel's eyes softened slightly just for a moment. Sometimes. The princess wanted to ask more. She wanted to understand what sometimes meant for a human soldier, but she sensed that if she pushed too much, she would break the careful balance between them, so she asked something else. Do you believe humanity will be accepted? She asked. Daniel's gaze moved to the stars beyond the garden dome, visible through the station's outer glass. I think some will accept us, he said. Some won't. Some will pretend to accept us while planning around us. That's normal. The princess's posture stiffened. You speak as if you already know the politics here. Daniel's voice stayed gentle. People are people, different shapes, different rules, but the same basic fears, the same basic pride, the same desire to survive. The princess felt her chest tighten slightly again. It was uncomfortable to hear her world reduced to people are people. And yet, it felt true. They returned to the exchange hall after several minutes. The princess's attendants looked slightly tense when they saw her return with the human soldier, but they said nothing. Inside, the exchange had shifted to practical matters, trade possibilities, scientific cooperation, shared research. The princess rejoined the conversation, but her mind remained partly elsewhere. When a delegate from a large empire made a subtle comment about human inexperience, the human diplomats did not react defensively. They acknowledged that humanity had much to learn, and then they offered something specific, a proposal to share disaster response systems and medical research for multi-species environments. The princess watched how the room changed. The older delegates had expected humans to demand equal power to argue for status. Instead, humans offered usefulness, stability, shared benefit. It was disarming. Later, as the exchange ended, the princess found herself standing near the human delegation leader again. You bring soldiers to cultural exchanges, she said, keeping her tone neutral. The leader did not look offended. Sergeant Reyes is here for security, yes, they said, but also because he's good at reading rooms, he helps us avoid mistakes. The princess's gaze flicked briefly to Daniel, who was now speaking quietly with another security officer, pointing subtly at a corridor route and nodding. You rely on soldiers for diplomacy, the princess said. The leader smiled slightly. We rely on everyone for diplomacy. On Earth, you don't survive by keeping skills in one box. People wear many hats. The princess considered that. On her world, roles were rigid. A person born into one path rarely changed it. Humans seemed to treat paths like roads that could connect. When the exchange ended and the humans began packing their devices, the princess prepared to leave. As she turned, she found Daniel's gaze on her again. He did not stare. He simply noticed. The princess walked toward him, her attendants a few steps behind. Sergeant Reyes, she said. Yes, Your Highness, he replied. The princess hesitated, feeling something unfamiliar, not fear but uncertainty about her own words. Your presence affects the room, she said. People become calmer when you are near. Daniel looked genuinely surprised. I don't think that's because of me, he said. It is, the princess said, more firmly than before. You do not demand attention, yet you create order. Daniel's eyes lowered for a second, as if the compliment made him uncomfortable. I just try to make things easier, he said. The princess's voice softened slightly despite herself. That is not a small thing. Daniel looked up again, meeting her eyes. No, he agreed quietly. It is. The princess turned away before the moment could become too exposed. She walked back through the station corridors, her steps measured, her posture perfect. Yet inside her mind, something continued to shift. Humanity was not what the galaxy had expected. Not loud conquerors, not desperate beggars, not helpless newcomers. They were builders who expected storms and still walked forward. They were people who had learned, through pain and failure and repair, that calm was not a performance. Calm was work. In her suite that evening, the princess requested a private report from station security about human behavior during diplomatic events. Her attendants brought it silently. The report was boring in the best way. It listed small actions: humans checking exit routes, humans adjusting translation devices, humans offering water, humans noticing stress in other delegates and lowering their own voices. No dramatic incidents, no threats, no confrontations, just steady competence. The princess read the report twice. Then she dismissed her attendants again and sat alone in the softened light. She thought about Daniel's words, "Problems don't grow teeth if you handle them early." She thought about his quick check during the maintenance announcement. She thought about how he had looked at her like she mattered, not as a symbol, not as a prize, but as a life. Her throat felt tight again, and she disliked the feeling. She wanted to blame the station's air mixture, but she knew it was not that. She stood and walked to the window of her suite, where the stars spread wide beyond the station's hull. Her people's empire was old. It had survived by controlling everything: emotion, resources, information. It had survived by making sure nothing was uncertain. Humans had survived the opposite way. They had survived by facing uncertainty so often that it became normal. The princess wondered for the first time which way was stronger, and in that moment she realized something that unsettled her even more. She wanted to speak to the human soldier again, not because she needed him, not because she wished to test him, because she wanted to understand what kind of mind could stand in a room full of powerful beings and remain calm without needing to prove anything. The next morning, the station prepared for a formal tour of the human delegation's assigned research wing, small, temporary, but carefully arranged. The princess had not been scheduled to attend. She made sure she was invited anyway. When her attendants questioned the change in schedule, she answered with a simple, royal truth. "I will observe," she said. "That is my duty." They could not argue with duty. As she left her suite, her robe and ceremonial accessories perfectly arranged, she felt the familiar armor of Poise settle around her again. But under that armor, something new had formed: curiosity. Not the shallow curiosity of studying a subject from afar, but the deeper curiosity of seeing a possible change in the galaxy's balance. As she approached the meeting point for the tour, she saw the human delegation waiting. And there, as steady as the station's own structure, stood Sergeant Daniel Reyes. He noticed her immediately. For a fraction of a second, his expression shifted: surprise, then understanding, then that calm focus again. The princess did not allow herself to hesitate. She stepped forward, ready to enter the next layer of human reality. And she felt very clearly that her struggle to maintain poise was only beginning. The tour of the human research wing began quietly, without ceremony. The section assigned to humanity was smaller than many of the older empire's areas, but it was clean, well-organized, and clearly designed with flexibility in mind. Walls could shift, consoles could reconfigure, spaces could change purpose within minutes. The princess noticed these things immediately. She walked at the front of the group, her attendants close behind. The human delegation leader explained the layout in clear, simple language, avoiding exaggeration. They spoke about shared laboratories, emergency response planning, and cooperative research meant to help species adapt to each other's environments. Daniel Reyes walked several steps behind the princess, positioned slightly to her left. Not close enough to invade space, not far enough to be irrelevant. His attention moved constantly, checking corners, exits, the expressions of visitors, the rhythm of the group's movement. The princess did not look at him directly, but she felt his awareness like a steady presence. As the tour continued, the princess found herself asking more questions than usual. She asked about human medical research, especially how humans handled unfamiliar biology. The answers were careful and practical. Humans did not claim mastery. They described testing, caution, and learning from failure. They admitted what they did not know. That alone made several older species uncomfortable. The group reached a central operations room, where large displays showed environmental data from different parts of the station. A human technician explained that this room allowed them to monitor shared systems and coordinate responses if something went wrong. The princess's gaze lingered on the word "if." On her world, systems were built with the assumption that nothing would go wrong. Failure was treated as an unacceptable outcome. Humans built systems assuming failure was possible. The difference felt important. The tour paused briefly as refreshments were offered. The princess accepted a small container designed specifically for her species. She noticed Daniel did not take anything. He remained standing, his attention still outward. "You do not rest," she said quietly, not turning her head. Daniel's voice came just as quietly. "I rest later." The princess did not respond, but something about the answer stayed with her. Then the station lights dimmed. It was subtle at first, just a fraction darker than normal. Most beings did not notice immediately. Daniel noticed. His posture changed, barely visible but precise. His eyes moved to the ceiling panels, then to the nearest wall display. A low chime echoed through the research wing, not an alarm. A system notification. The human technician frowned. "That's strange," they said. "We weren't scheduled for a lighting adjustment." The princess felt a ripple of tension move through the group. Nothing dramatic had happened yet, but uncertainty had entered the room. Another chime followed, this one deeper. The floor vibrated faintly underfoot. Daniel stepped closer to the princess, still at a respectful distance. "Your Highness," he said calmly, "we may need to move." "Why?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "Because small problems sometimes become larger ones," he replied, "and this area is connected to power routing." As if responding to his words, the wall displays flickered. Data streams stuttered, then resumed in uneven patterns. The human delegation leader spoke into a communicator, their voice controlled but tense. "Operations, this is Research Wing Alpha. We're seeing irregular power behavior. Can you confirm?" Static answered first, then a distorted reply. "Copy multiple sectors, maintenance cascade, working on reroute." The message cut off. The princess felt the tension spike around her. Several non-human delegates stiffened. One species emitted a low distress sound. Daniel raised his voice slightly, not loud, but firm enough to cut through the rising noise. "Everyone, please stay calm. This does not appear dangerous yet." "Yet," one delegate snapped. Daniel did not react emotionally. "Yet means we are acting early." The lights dimmed again, this time more noticeably. The hum of the station changed pitch. The princess felt her heart rate increase. She forced her breathing to remain slow, controlled. Panic was unacceptable. Loss of poise was unthinkable. But the environment itself felt unstable, and her instincts did not like that. Daniel stepped fully into motion now. He spoke into his own communicator, issuing short, clear updates. He did not shout. He did not rush. He moved through the room, guiding people away from walls where panels were opening for emergency ventilation. "Please move toward the center," he said. "Slowly, watch your step." He adjusted his instructions for different species, changing gestures, tone, and phrasing as needed. He remembered who needed more space, who reacted badly to sudden movement. The princess watched, startled. He was not commanding, he was coordinating. A sudden sound echoed through the wing, a sharp metallic snap, followed by a hiss. A section of the ceiling released a cloud of inert cooling vapor, harmless but visually alarming. Several delegates cried out. One stumbled backward. Daniel was there instantly, steadying them, guiding them down to a seated position. "You're safe," he said calmly. "Breathe slowly. The vapor is not toxic." "How do you know?" the delegate demanded, voice shaking. "Because the station uses standard emergency protocols," Daniel replied, "and because the monitors show no atmospheric threat." He gestured toward a nearby display, already adjusting it to show simplified readings. The princess realized he had absorbed this information in seconds. Another vibration shook the floor, stronger than before. The lights went out completely for half a second before emergency illumination activated. The room was bathed in soft red light. An alarm finally sounded, not shrill, but steady and low. The human delegation leader spoke again into their communicator. "Operations, we've lost primary power to Alpha Wing. Status." This time the reply came clearer. "Cascade failure in the station's environmental control network. Multiple sectors affected. No hostile action detected. We are isolating the fault." Cascade failure. The phrase carried weight. The princess felt a sharp spike of fear try to break through her training. A cascade could spread. Systems could fail in sequence. Life support, gravity, containment. She straightened her posture, lifting her chin. She would not show fear. Daniel noticed her anyway. He turned to her, his expression calm but serious. "Your Highness, I recommend we move to a safer zone." "Where?" she asked. "The Central Garden Dome," he said. "It has independent power and life support. It's designed to handle emergencies with multiple species present." The princess hesitated. The Garden Dome was public, open, symbolic. Retreating there could be seen as weakness. Another tremor ran through the floor. Daniel did not pressure her. He simply added, "I will stay with you." The words were not dramatic. They were factual. The princess made her decision. "Lead," she said. Daniel nodded once and moved ahead, signaling to other security personnel and human staff. The group began to move through the corridors, guided by emergency lighting. The station felt different now. Quieter in some ways, louder in others. Systems hissed and clicked. Distant alarms echoed from other sectors. The princess walked steadily, her attendants close. Her mind raced through possible political consequences, but beneath that was something more immediate. She trusted Daniel. The realization startled her. As they moved, Daniel gave instructions to nearby beings who were not part of the original tour, lost visitors, confused staff. He directed them calmly, splitting groups when needed, guiding them towards safe areas. He remembered faces. He remembered needs. At one junction, a corridor sealed suddenly, emergency barriers sliding into place. The path to the garden dome rerouted. Daniel paused only briefly, scanning the updated map on a wall display. "This way," he said, adjusting instantly. The princess followed without question. When they reached the edge of the garden dome, they found it crowded. Delegates from many species had gathered there, drawn by the stable environment. The air was fresh, the lighting normal. Plants glowed softly under bioluminescent panels, but the crowd was tense. Voices overlapped, fear spread. The princess stepped forward instinctively, ready to assert authority, to restore order through presence alone. Before she could speak, Daniel did something unexpected. He raised his voice, not loud but clear. "Attention, everyone." The sound cut through the noise because it was calm, not forceful. "We are experiencing a system failure," he continued. "Not an attack, not sabotage. Station engineering is isolating the issue." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "We are safe here," Daniel said. "The dome has independent systems. Please remain where you are, sit if you need to, help those who are stressed." He did not mention humanity, he did not claim authority. People listened anyway. The princess watched in disbelief as delegates from ancient empires followed the guidance of a human soldier without hesitation. She stepped beside him. "Why are they listening to you?" she asked quietly. Daniel did not look at her. "Because I'm not asking them to trust me," he said. "I'm giving them something to do." The princess felt something shift again, deeper this time. A young delegate from a smaller species approached, visibly distressed. Their breathing was rapid, their posture collapsed. Daniel knelt slightly to match their height. "Hey," he said gently, "you're okay, try breathing with me." He demonstrated slow breaths, exaggerating the motion. The delegate followed, shakily at first, then more steadily. The princess had seen medics do this. She had never seen a soldier do it. Minutes passed, then more. Station updates came sporadically. The cascade had spread further than expected. Environmental controls in several sectors were offline. Gravity fluctuations had caused minor injuries. Medical teams were stretched thin. Humans responded immediately. Human engineers coordinated with station staff, sharing diagnostic tools and models. Human medics moved among the crowd, checking vital signs, offering water, calming panic. They did not wait for permission. They did not demand control. They filled gaps. The princess stood in the center of the dome, watching 100 small acts of competence unfold. Humans adapting protocols on the fly. Humans communicating across language barriers with gestures and diagrams. Humans stepping back when another species expert knew more. The galaxy had expected humans to be chaotic. Instead, they were stabilizing. A station official approached the princess, their voice tight. "Your Highness, there is concern about the dome's capacity if the cascade continues." The princess turned toward Daniel instinctively, then stopped herself. She was the ruler here. She should decide. And yet, Daniel met her eyes, understanding her unspoken question. "If capacity becomes an issue," he said, "we can rotate groups. The dome systems can handle short-term surges, but spreading people out reduces stress." "You speak as if you have managed such things before," the princess said. Daniel's expression flickered briefly. "Disaster response training," he said, "and experience." The princess nodded slowly. "Do it," she said. Daniel relayed the plan calmly. Humans coordinated movement in phases, guiding groups to secondary safe zones once they were cleared. No pushing, no shouting. Just steady motion. The princess found herself assisting without realizing it. She used her presence to reassure delegates from her empire, her calm voice reinforcing Daniel's instructions. They worked together. The thought struck her suddenly, sharp and clear. This was cooperation, not treaties, not speeches. Action. Hours passed. The station's systems gradually stabilized. Engineers isolated the failure to a flawed update in a shared environmental control algorithm, an oversight, not malice. No lives were lost. Injuries were minor. The crisis ended not with triumph, but with relief. As emergency status was lifted, exhaustion settled over the dome. Delegates sat among the plants, some resting, some speaking quietly. Daniel leaned against a railing for the first time, rolling his shoulders slightly. He looked tired. The princess approached him. "You did not lose control," she said. Daniel gave a small exhale. "We got lucky and people helped." "You led," she said. Daniel shook his head. "I supported." The princess studied him. "On my world, that distinction would be meaningless." Daniel met her gaze. "On mine, it's everything." The princess felt a tightness in her chest that was not fear. "You did not treat this as a threat," she said. "You treated it as a problem." Daniel nodded. "Threats make people defensive. Problems make people think." The princess looked around the dome. Delegates from rival empires sat side by side. Humans spoke with species that had never trusted each other before, because the crisis had demanded it. "Today," the princess said slowly, "humanity protected more than lives." Daniel's brow furrowed slightly. "We did. You protected stability," she said. "You protected trust." Daniel was silent for a moment. Then he said quietly, "That's good to hear." The princess realized then that he did not seek recognition. He sought outcome. That realization changed something fundamental in her understanding of power. Later, as station operations resumed and people were guided back to their quarters, the princess prepared to return to her suite. Her attendants were unusually quiet. Before she left, she turned to Daniel one last time. "You remained calm," she said. "Even when the situation worsened." Daniel met her eyes steadily. "Calm doesn't mean you're not afraid," he said. "It means you don't let fear drive." The princess inclined her head slightly. Not a bow, an acknowledgement. "Your people will change this place," she said. Daniel did not smile. "We hope we help." As she walked away, her posture once again perfect, the princess knew something had shifted beyond repair. The galaxy had seen humanity under stress, and humanity had not broken, they had held. And for the first time, the princess wondered whether her own people, so perfect, so controlled, could have done the same. The question stayed with her as the station lights returned to normal, and she knew that the final judgment of humanity had not yet been spoken. But it was already forming.